So, yeah, automation and artificial intelligence, robotics, all of that stuff. Now, you all work for companies that, do robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, data mining, all of that beautiful stuff. So tell me what's the benefit when you go into business, when you're doing, these kind of projects. What's the benefit of automation and artificial intelligence?
Well, basically the benefit for us as human beings is, working faster, working smarter. I think those are or more efficiently, as you wish. Efficiency, speed, and, smarter way of working, I guess.
Nice, very good. Efficiency, speed, smarter ways of working. Good input. Any other input benefits?
Maybe finding new solutions to different problems.
New solutions are very good. Very good. Any other input? Tough one. Benefits. Faster, definitely. More efficient, definitely. Smarter, and smarter ways of working, definitely. New solutions, absolutely. Maybe sometimes more difficult to determine new solutions, but absolutely add new solutions. I think I asked that question at the start because this is, I think, the biggest question that businesses genuinely struggle with when it comes to automation. Everybody hears about automation, robotics, artificial intelligence. Even the senior executives in a company have heard about it and know they should be doing something about that. The challenge for them is, what are the benefits of doing that? Is it worth the investment, therefore, versus the benefits? And do they really understand how to implement it? So I'm going to show you a little video. It's very short. It's a 3-minute sales video on RPA. And I'll ask for your reaction to it afterwards. So let me see if I can go ahead and share it. Hopefully it works. I need to add the sound. There we go. Hopefully you can see it. The picture might get a bit slow, but you should be able to hear everything, right?
Currencies which are requested by our clients via a banker or e-banking. The main process is split into 4 parts. Monitor order book for new requests. Receive and check work requests for completeness. Order currency on the ICE website. Capture and release payments. Robi is able to handle all 4 steps for a large number of cases. Going forward, our new colleague will handle tasks that require no brainpower, enabling our valuable staff to focus on more complex cases. The process is currently highly manual and handled through a third-party website. Currently, we have an average of 50 orders per day. The volume can be very volatile, for example, during the holiday season. Monitoring of the order book consumes time, and the processing itself is up to 25 minutes per case. This highlights the potential length of such a simple task. In addition, up to 3 process experts are required, as the process is divided into different sub-steps. Let's watch how Robi is doing his work in real time. First, Robi checks if the environment is ready for processing. Robi realizes that the browser window is missing, opens it and signs in. Now that everything is ready, Robi is checking the order book for new requests. He is now opening the first work request and the comment history. The free text parameters are sorted, interpreted, and buffered. We are now ready to start the required checks for first name, last name, and the sex of the business partner in order to be later able to choose the right salutation. We are now entering the order, starting by picking the franchise. Afterwards, we select the target currency, get an order pre-summary, and start propagating the required fields for delivery. Roby now selects the salutation, first name, and surname which have to be propagated based on the previously processed work request and the associated business partner. After entering the delivery options, the order summary appears and the total amount, which can also include delivery charges. Roby now checks the total amount against the client's portfolio. In this case, there are sufficient funds available. The funds will be transferred from the specified current account to the expense account. The settlement will take place the next day during a reconciliation run, for which Roby is also responsible. Meanwhile, Roby confirmed the order and is updating the work request with the order confirmation and rates.
Okay, you get the picture. You hopefully get the picture now. Reactions. So that's a genuine sales video that's I've seen now in about 3 different companies, that's sent around to senior executives to get them excited about robotics. So tell me, reactions.
We made something similar.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, it gets people excited and also possibly afraid of how many jobs will be replaced in the future.
Absolutely. Other reactions? Other thoughts? Mina, I know you're a data analyst. How would you respond to a little video like that?
I don't know. I am always asking who really benefits from this automation. I have a feeling that people are busier than ever when with all this automation, and you know, like what is all about. It should be like that we work less, right?
That's you raised a couple of really good points there. You know, who benefits? It's a really good question. We're busier than ever. That's another really good you know, point to make. And then, you know, what is it and how does it really impact us, right? They're really good questions. And so all very good, you know, those kind of questions. But it would definitely get some people excited, which, if you think of a business from the executive management, you know, kind of middle management, IT tech people, just everyday people doing their daily jobs, out of those kind of groups, who do you think would be excited and who do you think would go, you know, react negatively to it?
Well, managers would be excited. Probably they would think that they can cut costs and everything, and people who need to, you know, adjust to another way of working would probably be I don't know, they people don't usually like change, so yeah, it would be, they wouldn't like it particularly, but yeah, but managers probably would, because they assume they would cut costs, which is
Absolutely. And that comes to, you know, you asked the question then, who benefits, right? So the managers can clearly see a benefit because they can potentially cut costs. back to Maya's point about, you know, easier, faster, more efficient. That's all good news in the ears of the managers. Maybe not so good news for those doing the jobs. I don't know if you watched my little video. I had a bit of fun with that because I found a really funny advert for dishwashers, and I kind of put it into my little video. Couldn't stop laughing when I watched this advert for dishwashers. So, you know, I use the analogy that a robot should be equivalent to a dishwasher, you know, to do the jobs that we don't enjoy doing, highly repetitive, you know, not necessarily value adding for the customer. How, when you sell a dishwasher or any kind of washing machine, how are the adverts put together? What kind of things do they show when they try and sell a dishwasher or a washing machine?
For dishwashers, it's usually happy ladies that have more free time with their children after they put dishes in the dishwasher.
Absolutely, which is a horrible stereotype, of course. It shouldn't be the, you know, the ladies and the women that free up. It should be the men as well, right? But no, you're right. So it doesn't show the workings of the dishwasher, right? You know, it doesn't show how in the background the motor pumps the water, heats it up, how the little spinny thing blasts the remaining food off the dishes and all of that kind of stuff. But with robotics and AI, what tends to happen when it comes to sales, this is quite an important point when we come to the, you know, how do we implement automation? We always show the workings of the dishwasher. We don't show how that improves the life of the people using the dishwasher. And the reason why I bring that up is because this is often why automation, AI, robotics, these kind of things, they end up mainly being driven out of IT, because the advertising shows the workings of the IT in the background. And that's why senior executives, even though they hear the words automation, they know they should do something about it, they use it as a buzzword, they're not the ones that are driving automation in the company. Which, if you think strategically about, you know, how you want to build your business, it should be the CEO that's driving robotics and artificial intelligence. And so there's a big difference between how robotics is perceived in large corporations. I think smaller businesses, the businesses are like 10, 15, up to maybe 50 people. There, you know, everybody can get involved in automation because it's a much smaller group. But when you're talking 2,000 up to 50,000, 150,000, and the senior executives really have no clue because they're presented with the workings of the dishwasher, and it doesn't show them the real benefits. If you created an advert where it showed, you know, an office workforce with the robot working away on the screen just in the background, right? You know, click go on your dishwasher, and then the employees either going to grab a cup of coffee because that's valuable, or going to do, or meeting with a client whilst the dishwasher's running, that's a far better business case and benefit for automation. Now, okay, so I've maybe tried to put that pointer across, but that then becomes important for what I really wanted to talk about today, which is maturity for automation, so that you can drive sustainable automation, because you all know how to do data mining, build robots, do AI. You've got the products and things like that there, so you could tell me far more about how that works. So what I wanted to dive in then is the maturity for sustainable automation, because that's a little bit different. If I start with an analogy, the circus, going to the circus. If I turned up at a circus and said, right, I want to be a trapeze artist, you know, where they swing very high up and they jump from one swing to the other swing. Sometimes they have a net to catch them. Sometimes they don't have a net to catch them. You know, the trapeze. So I turn up at a circus and say, right, I'm going to get straight on the trapeze and I'm going to jump from one trapeze to the other. What's going to happen? I have tried trapeze once. I wasn't very good. But what would happen if you turned up and tried to do trapeze?
I would break my neck.
You would break your neck. Yeah, very, very much. Absolutely. And that's a great analogy for implementing robotics and AI, because why? You know, a senior executive or a manager maybe sees that little video and goes, fantastic, right? I can cut 25% of my workforce. And they immediately jump onto the trapeze, or they try and implement, you know, the highest level of skill in the circus. They kind of like jump straight to the trapeze. And then, of course, so they try a robot, they try a bit of AI because they've seen it and they think, wow, that's fantastic, let's do it. And then they fall, they break their neck, and it doesn't work. Right? And I've seen this happen so many times. So when you join a circus or you want to learn how to do trapeze, there are stages you have to go through, right? And there's initially learning about how trapeze works. Even before you get on a swing or anything like that, you learn about it, you watch it a few times, you have experienced people share their knowledge with you. Then you might do some little baby steps. They'll teach you how to fall into the net, for example, first. Maybe first from like 1 meter and then 3 meters and then 10 meters to fall into the net. And then once you're good at falling into the net without hurting yourself, then maybe you start with a little swing. Maybe you even have to exercise first before you can even hold yourself up on the swing. Then you start with a low swing and work your way up, right? And to be sustainably good at the trapeze, you have to go through a process and training to get there, right? And then even when you're there, you still have to work out, still have to practice on a regular basis to really sustainably be good at trapeze, right? And therefore, to be good at robotics, automation, artificial intelligence in a business, you kind of have to go through the same process. So let me share, and it's really one of only 2 slides that I'll share today. So automation, really the maturity to go through. It starts with standardization, building standard processes, really understanding your processes. Then characterization. So now not only knowing what your standard processes are, but being able to measure the process performance itself. Not necessarily the performance of the output of whatever you're doing, if it's finance, if it's building, taps, if it's making products, but really characterizing the process itself in measurable terms. How long it takes to run the process. What is your volume of the things that you are processing, how many resources do you have operating the process, that kind of thing. So you need to have at least that in place before you can start on the journey of any kind of automation, because if you have random processes that's managed differently every time that you're doing an operation or you're making a product, if you don't know what the volume is, the time it takes, the lead time, all of these characteristics, you can't even start to do a workflow, let alone, you know, detailed robotics or apply artificial intelligence. And this is often the bit that gets missed in the implementation of robotics. You know, they jump literally from, you know, they jump from nothing, and then suddenly they want to do robotic process automation, or even worse, suddenly they jump and they want to do artificial intelligence. And the only thing that's going to happen in that situation, unless you're incredibly lucky, or you maybe have had some good skill set set up before, is it's just going to crash and it's not going to work. So then would come stabilization. You know, you implement some workflows. If you've got approval processes, they're fantastic for putting a first level workflow in place, all of that kind of stuff. Solve some of the basic problems in a process, because you might have standardized the process and you know, worked out the volume, etc. Still doesn't mean it's a good, efficient process at that point in time. So stabilizing the process, solving the bottlenecks, the problems in a process, then you're in a good position to do robotics. If you've got the first three in place, actually robotics then becomes relatively easy, because by that point in time, you know the process, you know the metrics around the process, you've eliminated some of the problems in the process, maybe the bottlenecks, these kind of things in a process. And then it's easy to then go and program a robot on an already mature process, right? You can get bigger benefits out of that. And then, of course, once you've got a few robots in place, you're managing your processes well, then you can move up to the level of far more complicated processes. You can apply AI to your data, because by then you should have your data in a structured way. Also your process performance data as well, right? So you can really start applying artificial intelligence to the more complex problems and processing. Thoughts, reactions, when you see something like that, and of course you've been working in this area, have you seen this before? What's your experiences of implementing, you know, automation, that kind of stuff? Reactions. I think, Isabella, you have to jump in a couple of minutes, right? So maybe I'll ask you first. When you see that, what are your reactions?
So, I mean, it's very interesting for me, but I cannot really give my opinion because that's not something that I work. I mean, I don't have any experience on that, so I'm just looking from an outsider, I would say. So it's a little bit hard for me to comment. That's why I'm particularly quiet in the session.
No,
but yeah, unfortunately, I do have to drop in a few minutes. So
that's okay. That's okay. And you know, the same would apply actually to any kind of project where you're trying to improve processes or efficiency or speed or lead time, or reduce costs, efficiency, resources. And you know, the robotics is, I always say, it's like the icing on the cake, you know, or the cherry on the cake. Good. Other thoughts?
It's also hard for me to comment on some of these more technical parts, but from like what I've seen working so far for a company that does this. Is I understand like how much understanding it has to go into like the whole process before robotics or anything automated is applied. And I think people just want a name like, yes, we are using AI, we are using machine learning. Doesn't matter if it's really AI or it's probably not real machine learning. It's just like probably something other, but it's important for companies to like think that they are following the latest trends and things, and it can lead sometimes to something bad.
Absolutely, you know, people, if they can say that we have some robotics and things like that, it's also, you can think of it at different layers in the organization. You know, at the more senior layer, if they say, yes, we've implemented artificial intelligence, that's good for building their platform as an executive. At the lower levels in management, if they say, yeah, we've implemented a couple of robots, it's a good way of keeping the wolves away from the door. You know, it's a good way of, thanks, Isabella. It's a good way of avoiding, you know, other people in the organization coming and saying, oh, you need to cut costs. If you can already say, oh, but we've already got a couple of robots, we're doing our bit to save money, even if the robots are not actually working or ineffective. It can also be a security for lower levels in management. They use it as an excuse not to really have to improve as well. So there's all kinds of psychology that goes behind robotics. It's not as simple as it might first appear. But I think the key is, for any genuinely sustainable automation or artificial intelligence program, or even just pure data mining and, you know, analytical reporting, that kind of stuff, you have to do the groundwork first for it to genuinely have a benefit and become sustainable. And that's the greatest starting point you can go into in any of these kind of projects. And it really works for also any business, you know, getting the basics of good process management in place to then optimize and then drive business efficiency, cost, speed. Speed is a real benefit out of this, but is often not so measurable because it doesn't have a dollar value attached to it. But we know from a very practical point of view, speed in terms of delivering stuff nowadays is very valuable. If you can deliver something within 24 hours, very happy. If it takes 6 weeks to deliver something, not so happy. So here's a real case example, very real case example. Insurance companies, big insurance companies, not to name any particular one. So every year, at the end of the year, they renew the insurance contracts that they have, right? You know, your insurance, your life insurance, your car insurance. Your life insurance, your car insurance, health insurance. Every year, you get a new contract. How long do you think it takes within the insurance company to process a new contract? Have a guess.
So, like when they get a contract, how long does it take to?
Yeah, well, you know, if you've already got your health insurance, for example, every year that gets renewed in December and you get a new contract every year. How long does it, so you've already got a contract, you've already got the starting contract. How long do you think it takes a big insurance company to, you know, from start to finish to create the renewed contract for the following year?
5 days.
5 days, good, very good. 5 days. Other questions? We can have a small bet of a bottle of wine on this one. Maya, what do you think?
Sorry, I had to disconnect. I had
That's
something
okay.
urgent.
That's fine.
I missed this last part, so.
We were asking the question for a renewed insurance contract, like your health insurance contract. How long do you think it takes the insurance company to process the new one for the following year? Have a guess in days.
In days?
Days or weeks, whatever you like.
I don't know. A new one. Let's say maybe a month or something.
Maybe a month. Good
Maybe.
one. And Mina, your bet on how long it takes?
I don't know, a couple of days. If everything gets the same, I don't know. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah. So none of you won. So Mina, that was my going in position when I joined a very large insurance company. I was thinking, oh, it should only take a couple of days, right? You know, the contract's already there. All you've got to do is put the new date on it. And maybe you increase the price a little bit every year, you know, it's 3% more or something like that, right? So it should only take a couple of days, highly automated processes. 12 to 16 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my reaction. Well, I said a few swear words as well. I mean, 12 to 16 weeks. And what was interesting when we did the analysis was a little side story. So one of the first projects I ever had to do was to look at the lead time of that process. And when we did the analysis, I was kind of also surprised by the different results. You can imagine there's a set of contracts which have no real change, right? Just a new date on it. Maybe you've increased the price a tiny amount, but in terms of the contents of the contract, exactly the same. So that's one group of contracts. And of course, you know, that's maybe 90% of all the contracts, right? Then you have, you know, a set of contracts which have maybe a small adjustment to the terms and conditions. You know, maybe there's a small adjustment to, you know, your cancer coverage or your coverage for your glasses or something like that, right? Small change in the coverage, but not huge. So that's another set where there's a minor change. And then there's a small set, about 5%, where there's a major change to the contract. And this might be an interaction with the customer where they genuinely want to upgrade their insurance or add a new office to the insurance or add another car to the insurance, you know, where there's a major change to the contract, right? What shocked us even more was for the major change to contracts, that was taking 8 weeks. For the minor change to contract, that was taking 10 weeks on average. For the no change to contract, that was taking 12 to 16 weeks to upgrade the contract. Crazy, absolutely crazy. And of course, what was happening when we investigated it, because, you know, the clever insurance people that, you know, write the contracts, they loved working on the complex contracts. So what they did first, they went and picked up the complex contracts and delivered those first before then thinking about the contracts that had no change. And nobody was thinking about automating the no change to contracts. So then what happens to the customers? And in this case, we're really talking business customers, not us individuals. So the business customers were waiting 12 to 16 weeks to get a new contract with no change. And then they were going, where's our contract? You're so slow, you never deliver, right? So speed is a real benefit. And that's where automation can definitely play a huge role, but very real. And they still haven't properly automated the no change to contract yet. Still work to be done. So plenty of good opportunities. So it's a bit of a side story. So if that's the maturity path, let me just move to the next slide if I can. No, back one. How do you accelerate that maturity path? Especially when you're coming in to do a robotics project, and it may be that the process maturity is at a starting point. You have no standardized processes, you have no characterized processes, and you haven't stabilized the processes yet. So how do you accelerate that? Because often with a robot, the usual contractual time frame you have for implementing robotics is 12 weeks. That seems to be the standard kind of, implement a robot in 12 weeks, right? Which is already quite some good time and is easy amount of time if the processes are already well stabilized. But often, of course, they're not. So how do you accelerate that implementation process? Then there's a very simple, easy process establish, which is get the first part of the process stabilization done. Deploy, which is then build the robot or prepare to build the robot, do your proof of concept, that kind of stuff. And then implement the robot and then measure the output at the end. And it goes nicely to that plan, do, check, act continuous improvement loop that we've talked about in some of the previous trainings. So it would start very simply like this: voice of the customer. Understand what it is that the customer wants in terms of the results from the robot. Dishwasher is a perfect example of that, even before dishwashers were invented. So you would sit down with the customer and go, okay, you have this dish, you have to wash the dishes every day. What do you want? What do you want as a result of that? I don't want to do the dishes anymore. Good, that's a good statement. I want the dishes to be clean. That's a good voice of the customer statement. Then you might talk to the business as well, the people actually doing the job today. And you go, what do you want? And often they'll say, I want a better cleaning brush. I want hotter water. I want soap on an automatic dispenser. Always get the best answers from the voice of the business. But that's good input to know where you can save time in the automation later on. Yeah. And then define the process, document the process. So that's what you would do very quickly in the establish phase preparation for implementing, implementing a robot, for example. Then deployment preparation. And this is really all about analyzing the process and its performance. Again, it comes to lead time, volume, variations in the process is a really important part to understanding that. And then setting targets around that performance. How fast do you want it done? How many variations will you put in scope? How many variations out of scope? It's often a really important thing to think about it, because often the robot can't cope with all variations. So you might want to do the analysis, exactly the same analysis as I mentioned with the insurance contracts. Which are the runners, as we call them? So that would be the contracts that have no change. We would call them runners because they just run. And we have a large volume of them, usually the kind of between 60 and 80% of our volume work would be the runners, regular in. What are the repeaters? Ones that don't come in so often, but do repeat, on a reasonably regular basis, and maybe that's 10 to 15% of the volume. And then what are the strangers, the 5%, those contracts that have a major change? And often when you look at implementing robotics, and if you have variable processes, you just simply start with the runners, do the proof of concept on the runners first, then you can move on to the repeaters, and often leave the strangers out of scope until you get to the point where you can implement AI, for example, that can really deal with complex processes. So that's the deploy phase where you would do that kind of analysis. Once you've got all of that information together, your process well defined with the voice of the customer, what they want out of it, you've measured and analyzed the process in terms of the performance metrics, then you're in a good place to then go and start programming the robot around the process. So you could do a proof of concept or a little pilot first on a subset of the work, or you could just go all in, implement the robot, test the robot, of course, before you launch it, and then run it for a period of time, often 3 to 4 weeks, then to measure the output of it. And that's how you go about deploying automation or artificial intelligence or anything like that. Questions? Does that make sense? It's a relatively straightforward project process. Easy to say, not always easy to do because you get stakeholders and people in the way. But it's a relatively straightforward way of really accelerating the implementation of your robots and building in a level of sustainability. Questions, thoughts, questions?
I think that the most important part is to have like a person who is gonna be in charge of implementing the technology and who is gonna be knowledgeable about existing processes and what are the, I don't know, the weaknesses of the processes and how this new tool can be integrated. So having that person or team of people on the client side is really crucial. So, and having that knowledge and be able to balance between the, what are possible solutions and, I mean, what are the requirements and possible solutions is the most important segment.
I couldn't agree more. That, especially that word owner, it's only one tiny little word on one of those slides about owning the process. I've seen this also with some robots where, implement a robot quick because, you're asked to do something and implement the robot from the executives up above. So they implement the robot and then nobody owns the robot. Everybody just, walks away from the robot and doesn't look after the robot or own the output of the robot. And that's a big failure mistake if that happens, because then either your robot just carries on doing stuff without anybody looking at it, or then nobody uses the robot, just goes back to old ways of working and it ignores the robot, right? So you're absolutely right. Ownership is fundamental for success. Can't implement a robot if you don't have somebody owning it and maintaining it. Just like any machine, it has to be maintained at certain points in time, right? To keep it running. Processes change, inputs definitely change into processes. So you have to maintain it as well. Really good point, Mina. It sounds like you've had experience with that.
Yeah, I had.
Yeah, and this is often, at this point of time when you start with the team, this is often where you'll face the resistance. And it's only natural that people will fear for their jobs. They won't want to give away their skilled knowledge because that's what gives them value in their job. So often, if you're conscious that you're going in and you know that people will just naturally have a fear of their jobs and that you might be taking the value away from their job today, that's a good starting point because you can talk about that. You can get it on paper in a workshop. That kind of thing helps people to feel more comfortable then with the robot implementation. Yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Thoughts? All relatively straightforward.
Or too abstract, not sure.
Or too abstract, one of the two. Okay, let me just come back to the slide a little bit then. So if you think about any good project, right, implementing a project, then in a way this one page can become your project plan. So for every step, you can really put it on a good old classic Gantt chart, for example, and say, right, the first week, I'm going to identify the voice of the customer and the voice of the business. That's going to be, you know, step number one, if you like. Then I'm going to, okay, this says a CTQ tree. That stands for critical to quality, which is converting the voice of the customer into kind of like a measurable quality metric. It could be, again, you know, converting speed, cleanliness, whatever it is, right? The real KPIs. Then in the third week, you really get into the process definition itself, the scope of the process, the owner of the process, coming back to Mina's point. And then in the fourth week of the project, you do the process mapping, right? And all of the interfaces, and also the data mapping. That's not listed on here. If you're doing real robot, you also want the data inputs as well. You know, what sources of data are you pulling from? Other databases you need to reference, all of that kind of good stuff you would do. So it really is, on one page, a step-by-step project plan for you to implement any scale of automation. This can be used for automating your Jira inbox, or it could be used for automating huge end-to-end processes as complex as the automation of annual contract renewals, for example. So it is a really simple way, but super effective at getting automation implemented well. Good. Any other questions?
No, nothing from my side.
Good. So a little cheat sheet for you when you come across those automation projects. Then just very quickly then, slightly different topic. I'm just pulling it up now. Now I've lost my Teams thingy. Here it comes. Right, so we've got another 5 wonderful sessions to go in our original 20. It feels like we've been at it for almost like a year or something, you know, having these regular sessions. I genuinely hope that you've been enjoying them, because I've definitely been enjoying them. Something to look forward to in the week. Just a shame that we can't do it on a Friday evening anymore. So we've got 5 more sessions to go. Next week, driving change, and that's really about people change, and that's relevant for everything else we've talked about, even just the automation right now. How do you overcome resistance? How do you accelerate people through the good old change curve or through the learning curve? How do you really effectively do that? Again, accelerating change. So we'll do that next week. Then we've got facilitating project work. If you in any kind of project, often you'll facilitate work in mini workshops or in meetings or even in large workshops, that kind of thing. So that's going to be about how to facilitate that kind of working environment, how you can get agreement out of workshops really quickly. How do you deal with troublemakers in workshops? Because that can also be a challenge. So how do you just like run and facilitate really good workshops so that you get the output that you want? So that's all about workshops. Executive presence, building on communication, leading people, communicating virtually taking that to real executive presence. How do you, if you think of the most senior leaders in the world, how can they stand in front of an audience of 60,000 with confidence and, at certain level of presence and engagement? So we're going to dive into that topic. Hackathons, how to run a hackathon, very relevant for automation topics. And then finally, coaching people for better results. So rather than just telling people what to do, how to coach people so that they do it for themselves is the last topic. I wanted to ask, with those 5 topics, do they make sense for you? Are they still on course for the kind of things that you wanted to learn? Do we need to adjust the last 5 topics a little bit to focus on something else that you might really think, I need another topic in there, or does it still look a good plan for you?
I think it looks good for me.
Thank you, Sarah.
Not sure if the girls are sleepy.
I agree.
I like the plan, Mark. I like the plan.
That's good. Then we'll finish off with those last 5. More coffee next time. Then.
Slow morning.
Slow mornings, Thursday mornings. It's not the best time to do fun things like this, really. Either Monday morning to kick the week off is good, or Friday afternoon to finish the week off is good for these kind of things. But all good. No, with that then, thank you very much for joining today on automation. Look forward to diving into the people change topic, building on everything else that we've learned so far. So with that, have a super fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now. Bye.